Alright y'all, today we're making an extremely untraditional enchilada dish. You could say it steers towards the Caucasian folks, but we're making a creamy, cheesy, white sauce enchilada with pulled rotisserie chicken, and we're also going to be adding some poblano peppers, jalapenos, and I'm going to top it off with a little bit of bacon, nothing crazy, but just to give it a little bit of a smoky essence flavor. So we're going to start by breaking down our chicken. So I'm going to start pulling that apart, and once we get it all done, we're going to mix it in a bowl with some seasonings and some cilantro, some other items. So just stay tuned, we're going to get it all going here shortly. So when it comes to the rotisserie chicken, I just get the one that's already made at the store. Makes it a hell of a lot easier to deal with. So we're going to get that trussing string off of there. And I'm going to break this thing down, pull all the meat off the bone. And I'm going to use the drippings in here too to give the mix a boost of flavor, so to speak. But as I'm tearing it apart here, we're going to break it down. I'm going to save some bits and pieces for my dogs, stuff that they can eat. Again, you want to avoid giving chicken bones to your dogs, especially like leg bones and breast bones, things like that. But some of these knuckles and things in the meat you can actually give your dogs, and they really, really love it. So I'm going to start pulling this all apart. I'll show you what that looks like after we get done pulling all the meat off of it. But stay tuned, we're going to get it all done here shortly, and then we'll start building our enchiladas for tonight. Now as I'm tearing all the meat out of here, we do want to save the skin as well. Now some of the breast meat might be considerably dry, so we're not going to use as much breast meat as we will the dark meat in this. Plus the dark meat adds significantly more flavor. But the breast meat, we don't want to use that dry breast meat in our enchiladas to make them really unsavory, so to speak. But I'm going to break all this down, keeping the skin. Again, we're setting aside knuckles and things for the dogs so they can have a treat. But after we get all this pulled off, as I was saying earlier, I'll show you what all the meat looks like. We're going to kind of pull it apart and shred it up a little bit. I don't want to chop it up because I don't want it minced. But we're going to get all this meat off the bones here. Breaking down this rotisserie chicken's not very difficult. It's cooked very, very well, so you're able to get all that meat and stuff off there real easy. But I'll get to getting the rest of this meat off, and then we'll start talking about the ingredients we're going to put into the filling for these enchiladas tonight. When you're breaking down this chicken, always make sure you don't avoid getting that little, we call it the oyster of the chicken. It's going to be on the back. That is one of the most flavorful, distinct part of the chicken. You don't want to waste that. Make sure you're getting all the meat off there you can. And again, I'm setting some stuff aside for the pups to snack on. But we're going to get all the meat off of the back as well, which a lot of people generally either don't know about or they kind of avoid it. But right here on the backbones, where the shoulders are of the bird, there's some really good flavorful meat there, and you want to get all that off there. Just pulling it right down, and along this spine as well, there's a nice little bit of meat. It's all about the flavor, and that's going to add so much flavor to your dish. So make sure you're getting it all pulled off. And again, we're not going to use all of the breast, we're going to use some, but all this little scraps and stuff will go to the pups. We'll get it all taken care of there. And once we have it all broken down, we'll start shredding it and mixing it in a bowl with all the other ingredients. So now I'm just giving my dogs the scraps right now of all the chicken pieces, and it's funny because they either hear me breaking it up or they smell it and they know what it is. So they've all come rushing to the kitchen. But I'm going to get them these little snacks here, and then I'll start finishing up with the mix that's going to be going in the enchiladas. Alright, so we got all the chicken ready to go off of the bone. Grab me a mixing bowl, and I'm just going to shred this up a bit. So make sure you can see what I'm doing here. So again, I was considering not using all the breast, but this breast is so moist and juicy, we're going to put it right in there. Again, we're shredding up this bird meat a little bit. We want it still kind of chunky and not just completely destroyed. But we're going to shred this all up, get it in our mixing bowl, and then I'm going to show you we're going to roast some poblano and jalapeno over a flame and get a nice char flavor on there. Once we do that, some of that's going to go into the filling as well as the sauce today. But we're going to get this all shredded up, and then we will go from there. Alright, chicken's all shredded, ready to go. I'm going to set that aside while I roast my peppers. Be cautious too when you're pulling apart your chicken meat here. It gives you another opportunity to make sure you've got all the bones out of there and that all your skin is shredded up enough too. You don't want big chunks of skin floating around in there. So after it's all shredded up like it is, again, we're going to set it aside. I'm going to start roasting those peppers. As we're going to roast these peppers, keep something in mind. All those juices from that from the container that the chicken came in, you don't want to waste that. Put that in with your chicken meat filling and it'll add so much flavor. But to do these peppers, what we're going to need here is we're going to need a long metal tongs and both of our peppers. And now what we're going to do is we're going to roast them over a flame. If you don't have a flame, unfortunately, you can't really get the same effect. But those are going to go right on the stovetop like so. Once they start snapping and crackling, we'll just keep turning them. We do want to cook the actual pepper a little bit, other than just getting the skin off of there. So once we get that all the skin charred, we'll take it off and we'll peel that skin off, and then we'll chop up the inside of that pepper. And that's going to go in our filling as well as our sauce. And don't forget to keep turning them. You don't want to get too much on one side and not enough on the rest. Just keep turning them around so it's all charred on the outside and that inside meat is kind of soft and cooked. So a little trick to the trade after we get done with those peppers, we're going to put them in a plastic bag. That's also going to help keep the meat cooking further. And then that way too, it'll be easier to peel that skin off. So definitely seal the bag. You want it closed. Just let it rest like this for a couple minutes. Let it, cool down a bit. We'll pop them back out of there, and then I'll show you how we peel the skin off and then get the meat out of there. I'm also going to test that jalapeno to make sure it's not crazy spicy. If it is, I'm only going to use a little bit or de-seed it. The poblano shouldn't be spicy, so we should be good there. But just let it rest for a couple minutes, steam it in the bag, and then we'll be able to clean it up. So while that's happening there, get my pan out as well to make our sauce, creamy sauce. And we're just going to set that aside for now because I want to get the filling done first. So we'll make the sauce after the filling's all mixed together with all of its ingredients. And we're going to add some onion powder, some touch of chili powder, some garlic powder, and then inside I'm also going to add some creamy mozzarella cheese and just a touch of taco seasoning to give it a little bit of flavor. Alright, again, so while that's kind of cooling off, letting those peppers kind of finish off, I'm going to go ahead and start adding my seasoning to the mix here. So again, we're going to add a little bit of taco seasoning. I'm going to add a touch of chili powder as well. Now I prefer to use Gebhardt chili powder. It's probably not as well known as you would think. This is a chili powder my dad used to use in his chorizo recipe. It just adds a different, distinct flavor. So we're going to add just a touch in there, nothing crazy. And then on the onion powder, I want to add just about probably a full teaspoon. Go a full teaspoon onion powder. We're also going to do a full teaspoon of garlic powder as well. Get that all in there. And we haven't added any salt yet either, so I'm going to add my favorite adobo seasoning salt. Get a little bit of that in there. It's also going to have the garlic. We're going to do a touch of white pepper. And I have it in a grinder here, so it's nice and fresh. Touch of white pepper. And then just to finish it all off, a little bit of that pink Himalayan salt. So once that's all in there, I'm going to take a lime. We want to get it juiced a little bit. So I like to roll it on the countertop. That helps get the juice out. We're going to add just half a lime juice. Squeeze it right in there and try to get as much out as you can. The acidity is kind of balanced with the creaminess of the cheese, so it's going to add some really good flavor there. So other than the cheese and the peppers, this is pretty much ready to go. So again, I'm going to set it aside, and then we're going to clean up these peppers real quick. I'm going to use my not so great cutting board to do so because it might stain my bamboo one. But these are starting to cool off pretty good, so we're going to get to getting those cleaned up here. Alright, always put a towel underneath your cutting board. It helps it from slipping around. Alright, let's pop these open and see where we're at. these are going to be messy, so just as a heads up. But we got good char on the outside there. And one way to kind of do this too, I've done it before, is like in an ice bath. If you take your blade and just kind of rub along here, you're going to be able to get the majority of that off of there. And we want a little bit of the charred skin in there, but not a lot. And we want it just for flavor more than anything. So once we get all this char off of the flesh of the pepper, we keep scraping. You know, kind of turn the pepper over, do the same thing on the other side. You see it just comes off real easy. And once we get this all cleaned up, we will get the rest of the skin off of the jalapeno. And then we're going to test it, as I said earlier, to see how spicy it is. That'll determine the amount I'm going to put into our dish today. So stay tuned for that. Alright, poblano's done. Now we're going to get to the jalapeno. Do the same thing, just use your knife. You don't want to press too hard because you're not trying to cut it. Just scrape all that off, just like that. Once you get it all scraped off, get all that flesh out of there, we'll start to mince it up pretty good. Give it some good flavor in our enchiladas tonight. And again, we'll be using some of this in the filling as well as the sauce. Cleaned up, cut the top off there, and let's just see how spicy it is. Split it. So not crazy spicy. I am probably going to take out that pith and the seeds though, just to tame it down a little bit, and we'll get all that cut out of there. Leave a few seeds in there too, give it some flavor. Cut that right out. Alright. We're going to do something similar with the poblano. For the meantime, I'm just going to set this aside and throw it on a plate over here. And then we are going to go ahead and clean off our little cutting board of all the mess we just made. Get to cleaning that in a little while. Let's check our poblano too, make sure it's not crazy spicy. Usually poblanos are not, so that's a good thing. Yeah, I'm not getting too much heat out of there. Some of these seeds probably want to get out of there as well. Alright. Now that's all cleaned up. We'll get our old cutting board with the char on it still. We're going to go ahead and cut these up, mince them up real good. So we're going to take our chef knife and just start mincing this up. Jalapeno and poblano together. If you do see some part of the flesh that isn't really cooked enough, you can cut that out of there. It is a lot of pepper I got here, so we won't need all of it. But just chop it up real fine. I'm going to mince it up real good, almost till it forms like a paste. That way it'll evenly distribute throughout the whole thing. Good and cut up, and I'll show you what it looks like after I get done. Alright, so this is the consistency you're looking for. It's almost like a paste. And you go ahead and add about that much to our bowl for the filling. And we're going to get our cheese out and mix that all together, and then we'll set that aside as well. In the meantime, I'm going to set aside this pepper for the sauce. So don't waste that. We'll keep it set to the side. And once we start building the sauce, I will show you when we're going to add that to it. So we're going to go ahead and add our cheese to the filling. I'm going to use a whole 8-ounce bag of it. And then we're going to mix that all together nice and thoroughly. Make sure everything's evenly distributed throughout the chicken. So you want the seasonings, those peppers, and the cheese all evenly distributed throughout. And then once that's ready, we'll just set it aside in our refrigerator till we're ready to start building the actual enchiladas. And we'll do that after the sauce is made. If it does look like you need a little more cheese, feel free to add more. But don't forget, we'll have a lot of cheese in the creamy sauce that's going to be on top as well. Alright, so that's our filling. That's what that looks like there. And again, we're going to set it in the fridge and we'll start making that sauce here in a minute. Alright, y'all, so before we make the sauce, I'm going to go ahead and start building these enchiladas. So today I'm using flour tortilla, La Banderita. It's a low carb, keto style tortilla, but for what it's worth, they are super soft and they are great. So we're going to use those to roll up our enchiladas. We're going to do that little by little here. Get our first one out. And you don't want to make them overly huge because you want to get as many as you can there. But you also want to distribute the filling evenly. So make sure we get it all the way to the edge here on both sides. Once we get that filled like so, I'm just going to take that top part, roll it over the top, tuck it in, and then just continue to roll that tortilla till you get to there. So once that's like so, we're going to put it in our baking dish. And I'm not exactly sure how many actual enchiladas I'm going to get out of this, but I'm going to try to keep it as even as possible, trying to get it all filled properly. And with the cheese and the chicken and a little bit of juice from the chicken from that container that it comes in, it should give it really, really good flavor. So this one's getting a little big on me here, but I'm just gonna tuck it in, roll it up like so, get it right in our pan there. And once I get them all filled, we'll set that aside and we'll start making the sauce. Alright, we're going to start making the sauce for our enchiladas now. Again, it's a creamy, cheesy sauce. We're going to start with some butter. Probably about a tablespoon or two. All about the butter, so of course we use a lot. And what we're going to do first is we're going to start sweating out some garlic. Now I minced some fresh garlic here, chopped up pretty good, but that's going to be minced and put into the butter, and we'll get it sweated out a little bit. Next step, we're going to add our chicken stock. We're going to actually add a bone broth with a little bit of drippings from the rotisserie chicken, and that's going to give us a liquid base. After that, we will start getting our cheeses in there. So I'm using some cream cheese and I guess sour cream as well to get that nice creamy sauce. And we're going to top it with shredded cheese before we bake it, but the sauce itself is going to be mainly that as a base, and we'll thicken it up with a little cornstarch, trying not to use flour due to the fact of the carbs that come with that. So once our pan starts getting hot enough here, we'll add our garlic, start sweating it out. Add that now. And try to mince it as much as you can. You don't want big chunks of garlic in there. Get it mixed throughout there. Once that sweats out a little bit, we'll add our stock. And we have our leftover minced chilies from earlier as well that we want to get in there. And just a touch of lime juice. Again, that acid helps counteract the fats in the cheese, and it'll help me make it more smooth and consistency as well. Alright, garlic is sweating out really good, as you can see there. We don't want to burn it either. Garlic chopped this one tends to burn really quick. So as soon as you see it start bubbling and foaming up there, it's about as far as you need it. So we're going to add the drippings from earlier, like I said, and our chicken bone broth. Put that in the pan. We want to bring that up to a simmer, and once it starts simmering, we'll get in our chilies as well as our touch of lime juice. And then we will start adding the sour cream and cream cheese. I suggest softening the cream cheese. It makes it easier to disperse throughout the sauce. If it's a solid block, it's going to take more time and you won't really be able to stir it up very much. Alright, that is just about dispersed evenly. So while that's trying to come to a simmer, I'm going to add a little bit of milk, not a lot. That'll help stretch out the sauce a bit. Let that come to a simmer there. And I'm going to start first, after I get the chilies in, I'm going to start with a little bit of sour cream, and then we'll add that block of cream cheese. Alright, we added the green chilies to that. I'm going to add about half of this container of sour cream. So it's 8 ounces, we're looking to probably add about 4 ounces of sour cream there. And I use a whisk to get it to disperse evenly. And it'll melt a little bit more too as it heats up more, so don't worry about the little lumps. That'll all come out nice and smooth at the end. So while that's getting warm again, after adding that, I'm going to add my touch of chili powder. And it's literally just a touch. I'm going to add some white pepper. Probably about a quarter teaspoon of that. And some regular salt. And then lastly, just a touch of the adobo seasoning. Starting to come together there. So we go ahead and whisk it all together with its seasonings. Go ahead and give it a taste. And as of right now, I can tell it needs a little bit more seasoning. So we'll add a little bit more pepper as well as a little bit more salt. Alright, so I'm going to cut this block in half. That way it's not just one big block of cream cheese. And we're going to get all that off there. We're not going to waste any of it. Get it right in there. And now I turn the heat down as well because we want to slowly warm this up to get that cheese to disperse throughout the sauce. Just move that around, it'll start melting into the sauce, and then you can tell exactly what you're looking at for thickness. This won't thicken it up a ton, but it will a little bit, but that's where that cornstarch comes into play as well. A little trick as well too for thickening, I might add a little bit of Parmesan cheese too, and it gives it a nice little flavor bite. Up. Let that start to melt in there, and once it's all melted through, less lumpy, that's when I'll start to thicken. There. Let's get our thickening agent here. Start getting that in there as well. And kind of add a little at a time so you can kind of see where things are winding up. You don't want to dump a whole bunch of cornstarch in there and then it be too thick. Because then you have to water it down, and you don't want to do that. That ruins the flavor. Together there. Let that finish up. And I'll show you what it looks like when it's all done. So we're right at about the consistency we want for thickness. I'm going to add a little bit of that lime juice. The other half. Get that mixed throughout. I'm going to go ahead and kill the heat on that now. And we're just going to let this rest for a bit. don't want to pour it directly over the enchiladas yet, being as hot as it is, because that is on the colder side, and it'll just have a hot layer on top, and then it wouldn't cook evenly. So let this rest a little bit just to cool down, and we'll get it over the enchiladas. We're going to top it with a Mexican blend cheese that I'm going to chop some cilantro and put in there as well. Not a lot, it's more for garnish than anything. And then we will top that after we pour the sauce over it. And lastly, last thing we got to do is bake. And with everything kind of being on the warm side, so to speak, room temp, it shouldn't take too long in the oven, probably about 30, 35, 40 minutes, somewhere in there. All right, so sauce is cooled down enough now. So we're just gonna pour it over our enchiladas. It's a lot of sauce, so just be cautious. If you don't need it all, you can always put it back and use it in a different recipe later. We're gonna pour it right over there. As you can see, I'll give you a better angle there. There we go. Again, we're just pouring the sauce right over the top, like so. Once we got enough on there, we'll start spreading it out a little bit. Try to make sure you get all the tortilla covered, because as it bakes, if the tortilla is exposed, unfortunately, it'll just start to get too dark and crunchy. You're not really looking for a crunchy enchilada. Alright, so we got that over the top. Looking good. Got these last few that I'm going to get a bit of sauce over as well, like so. That should be enough for that. Make sure we spread it out. That should be good there. There is a remainder. I'm just going to spread it evenly on this as well as this, that way we can use it all up. Good and spread out, let it work itself down the sides. Like so. Same over here, let it work itself down the sides. And the last couple steps here will be to chop up the cilantro, mix it with our shredded cheese. Then we'll top these and get them in the oven. Alright, we're going to chop up our cilantro. Again, we don't need a lot, we're not looking for a bunch of flavor from it, though it will add a depth of flavor. This is more to garnish into the cheese, the shredded cheese blend. So that's about all I want to do, is about that much there. Make sure it's chopped up pretty good. And we'll reserve the rest of that cilantro for a later date. I also am going to add, after it's finished, I have some green onions or some scallions that I'm going to slice up, and that's just going to be sprinkled over the top. It's going to add a little bit of crunch and a little bit of that onion flavor. That should definitely enhance the flavor of the enchiladas. So now that that's all ready to go, get my cheese in the bowl, blend it up with my cilantro. Like so. And just kind of mix it through. You don't want it to be all clumped up on one side. You want to make sure it's distributed evenly throughout the cheese. Like that. That's kind of what you're looking for there. Once that's ready to rock and roll, we're going to go right over our enchiladas. Now this pan is pretty full, so I'm going to put a baking sheet underneath it as it bakes in the oven. If I don't, I'm afraid it might actually bubble over. Again, we're going to lay out our cheese there. And you're going to use all 8 ounces of cheese as well. Just kind of spread it evenly. Be cautious not to spill sauce over the side. There we go. Get that last little bit of cheese out of there. Like so. And that is ready to bake. So, we're going to do it at about 300 degrees. We don't want it cranked up like crazy. 300 degrees for, like I said, probably about 30-40 minutes. It should be done then, and I will show a short of the actual plated food a little later. I did want to remind myself and whoever's watching, I am going to toast up a little bit of bacon at the end too, just to sprinkle on top. It's going to add a little bit of flavor to it, but again, more for garnishing purposes than anything. But now that we're ready to rock and roll with these, I just want to get a nice close-up of what they're looking like. Looking good, ready to go in the oven.